Welcome back. I'm always, concerned. Do you want to be that first presenter again after lunch? Or do you want to be that first presenter or that last presenter before like cocktails and dinner, right? I'm not sure which is necessarily the best one. But anyway, welcome back. I hope you guys enjoyed your lunch. And as a result of your lunch, I wanted to do a shout out first to all of those who are helping us have that lunch. So I got a lot of names. But first, I'd like to give a shout out to, I can't pronounce the part, Ajinomoto Canberra, because they donated and sponsored a lot of the menu items. So thank you to them. A very special thank you to the PK News Cook for Love team, which is Jenny. I don't know where so if you can stand up. So it's Jennifer Beezer, Sarah Chamberlain, Nikki Wineland, and Brenda Winarski, who couldn't be here today, but all of them have spent hours and hours helping and working with our teams and stuff like that to make sure that there is high caliber food for everybody and low fee. And I've watched them in action and it's unbelievable. But then again, we also need to thank the kitchen crew, because without them, and also they have been so lovely about letting us in. So thank you. And I know that a lot of them aren't here, but thank you to Chef Troy, Chef Michael, Dre, Ben, Gina, Russell, and the entire banquet staff, who have been just unbelievable, courteous and nice, and have been having the best time also trying all the food and just always hoping there's a little bit left so that they could taste it too. So again, a big shout out, because without them, things wouldn't have been as special. So thank you very much. I think that before we get started, we're just going to show our little thermometer. Is that right? And look, amazing. So thank you again. Every single penny counts. So super, super appreciative to help us continue to support these programs. All right, for the afternoon, we are going to start with Brianna Johnson, who is the clinical trial manager at Ptc Therapeutics, and kind of walk us through, what is a clinical trial? How do you get into a clinical trial and all those kind of things? So that will be now. Right after this, Michelle Francis and Michelle Perntiner is going to talk about lifting the limits. And then we're going to have two panel discussions following. So that's kind of the roadmap for the afternoon. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Brianna. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to PTC Insightful Moments educational series for patients and families. My name is Brianna, and I'm a clinical trial manager at Ptc Therapeutics. PTC is a small to mid-sized biopharmaceutical company. We were founded about 24 years ago. We're headquartered in South Plainfield, New Jersey, and we have a business footprint in over 50 countries around the world. And we're focused on developing small molecule and gene therapies for rare disorders. So I joined PTC in 2007 as a biologist, and I was responsible for screening these small molecules in cells and little dishes. Do you guys hear the echo, or is it just me? You do? I don't know what to do. So I was, as I was saying, responsible for screening the small molecules in cells and little dishes. And then from there, we moved into animal models and then clinical trials in humans. And I am like oversimplifying it. It can take, it can take over 10 years just to develop just one drug. So then, when is it? About 2016, I wanted to get more involved in the later stages of drug discovery. So I moved from biology into clinical operations and now responsible for overseeing our clinical trials. So today I'll just be providing some insight in how to navigate clinical trials. So this presentation will cover what a clinical trial is, what the phases of a clinical trial are, different types of clinical trials, and some key trial terminology. So a clinical trial is a research study. It's used to validate a new treatment or therapy in volunteers. Researchers design clinical trials to answer specific research questions related to a medical product. These trials follow a specific study plan called a protocol that's developed by the researcher or manufacturer. Clinical trials are the primary way for researchers to find out if a new treatment, like a new drug or medical device, is effective and safe in people. So there are 4 phases of a clinical trial, and I have a short video that shows more about clinical trials in the 4 phases.
Before a medication or treatment can go from the laboratory to your home, it first needs to be tested through a series of research studies known as clinical trials. A clinical trial helps researchers determine the efficacy and safety of a treatment and how it can be used to treat a specific disease or condition. These trials are sponsored by pharmaceutical companies, nonprofit organizations, academic institutions, or other groups. Many individuals contribute to the success of a clinical trial, including doctors, clinicians, scientists, and participants, to name a few. Clinical trials take place in several different phases or steps, with each serving its own specific purpose. These different phases are similar to building a house. Let's take a closer look. In phase 1 trials, researchers study the effect of the treatment in participants to determine its safety and see how it interacts with the body. Phase 1 trials help create a foundation for the drug, one that future studies will build upon. Next are phase 2 trials, where researchers study the treatment's effectiveness while continuing to monitor any side effects. Think of phase 2 studies as the walls and roof of a house. Once this phase is complete, scientists have a clear picture about what the drug will look like and who will be able to use it. Sometimes, treatments are approved for use at the end of this phase. Phase 3 studies allow researchers to validate the effectiveness of the treatment and further determine its safety and efficacy in study participants. It's now time for a family to move into the house, and the house becomes a home. Phase 4 trials are used to test a treatment's effectiveness in a real-world setting. Phase 4 studies gather additional information about the treatment, including benefits, risks, and its effect on quality of life. Clinical trials are a vital component in the advancement of medicine and couldn't happen without the work of many scientists, healthcare providers, and participants. Thanks to clinical trials, medicine is able to go from the laboratory where it is discovered into homes where it is needed most.
So here are some different types of clinical trials. Treatment research, it generally involves an intervention such as medication, psychotherapy, or a new device. Prevention research looks for better ways to prevent disorders from developing or returning, and different kinds of prevention research may study medicines, vitamins, minerals, vaccines, or lifestyle changes. Diagnostic research refers to the practice of looking for better ways to identify a particular disorder or condition. Screening research aims to find the best ways to detect certain disorders or health conditions. And quality of life research explores ways to improve comfort and quality of life for those living with chronic illness. And then other studies could be genetic studies or epidemiological studies. So here are some key clinical trial terms. The protocol is a written description of the clinical trial and includes the objectives, design, and methods. The placebo is an inactive treatment. It's designed to look the same as the treatment that's being administered or tested in the clinical trial, and it's used to compare the effects of the active treatment. Open label is when both the researcher and the participant know which treatment the participant is receiving. However, some studies are designed to be blinded, or more specifically, double-blind or single-blinded. Double-blind means both the study participant and the healthcare provider that's providing the treatment, neither one knows which treatment they're receiving. Whereas single-blinded, just the participants don't know whether they're receiving placebo or the active treatment. And control or control group is a group of participants that either receive the placebo or the current standard care. And that way the researchers have an arm to compare the study treatment to. Randomization. So when a clinical trial is randomized, the study participants are allocated at random to either receive different treatment arms, so either the placebo or the active ingredient. And an adverse event is any unfavorable change in the health of a participant, and this change may or may not be caused by the treatment that's being studied. But either way, all adverse events do need to be reported to the clinical research team, and they're monitored very closely. So for example, if you were in a clinical trial and you get COVID, you know the study treatment didn't cause COVID, but you would still need to report that to the research team. And finally, informed consent. So prior to enrolling in a clinical trial, the process of informed consent provides participants with specific information related to the study. So before you can have any procedures done in the clinical study, including determining your eligibility to participate, you'll be provided with an informed consent form. And this form, the information in this form comes directly from the protocol and will tell you everything that you need to know as a participant in the trial. It does contain a lot of information, so I would say just take your time and read through it. If you have questions, doesn't matter how many, ask the research team, that's what they're there for. And during the process, the clinical research team will communicate the risks and benefits of participating. And all clinical trial participants are required to sign the informed consent form indicating they've been made aware of the purpose of the trial and the risks and benefits. The form is not binding though, so if you do sign it, you're free to change your mind at any time if you choose not to stay in the trial. So next we'll take a look at where do I find clinical trials? What are the different recruitment status? Why should I participate, and who's on the clinical trial team? So the best resources are found on clinicaltrials.gov. It's a searchable registry and results database of clinical trials that are conducted in the United States and around the world. And also pharmaceutical companies list their clinical trials on their website. So here are some different recruitment status. Not yet recruiting, just as it sounds. It means the study has not started recruiting participants. Recruiting is when the study is currently recruiting participants, and enrolling by invitation. That's when the study is selecting participants that was already decided on ahead of time by the researchers. And then a study will be listed as active, not recruiting, when it's ongoing and the participants are receiving intervention or being examined, but additional participants are no longer being recruited or enrolled. Suspended is when a study stops early, but it might start again. However, if it's terminated, it's stopped and it will not start again. And then a study will be listed, a study listed as completed has ended normally, and the participants are no longer being examined or treated. And withdrawn means the study stopped early before it could even enroll its first patient. Unknown is when the study completion date passed, but the status has not been verified within the past 2 years, and it's still listed as either not yet recruiting, recruiting, or active, not recruiting. So now that we know what clinical trials are, let's take a look at this video. It outlines why someone should participate.
Clinical trials are vital to the advancement of new medical treatments and couldn't happen without the participation of volunteers like you or your loved ones. Thanks to individuals who participate in clinical trials, researchers are able to gather the data they need to determine the efficacy and safety of a treatment. This allows for medicine to constantly improve and evolve, day after day and year after year. Through clinical trials, researchers are continually able to discover new treatment options for different diseases and conditions. These discoveries can not only benefit the people participating in the study, they can also have more far-reaching benefits for others, including those who are currently living with a specific disease or condition, and future generations as well. By taking part in a clinical trial, participants have access to the newest treatment options before they become widely available. As part of the study, volunteers receive support from the clinical care team in addition to their primary healthcare providers. Clinical trials provide researchers with a better understanding about how a treatment works, as well as study other outcomes, like a treatment's effect on quality of life. And most importantly, clinical trials provide hope and have the power to help change the outlook on living with a disease or condition. By participating in a clinical trial, you're helping to advance medicine. It's a chance for you and your loved ones to help discover the treatments of tomorrow, today.
The sponsor, this is an organization or individuals that fund the clinical trials. So it could be pharmaceutical company, medical center, voluntary groups, universities, and so on. This site, this is where the clinical trial takes place. So that could also be various locations, including hospitals, universities, doctor's office, clinics, and so on. The principal investigator, or PI, this is the healthcare professional or researcher at the clinical study site that leads the study and heads the research team made up of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals. The study coordinator works closely with the PI and oversees the research team and the study participants throughout the trial. Oops. The participant, also known as the patient or study subject, is anyone who provides consent to be in the study. So this could be you or your loved one. And the ethics review board is a group of individuals that review and monitor the study to make sure it's safe and that the participants are protected. So now that we know what clinical trials are, let's take a look at some questions you might want to ask your doctor, the study coordinator, and questions for your family, and then also some additional resources that are available to guide you along the way. The Center for Information and Study on Clinical Research Participation provides a comprehensive list of questions for patients and families to ask before joining a clinical trial. So here are some questions you might want to consider asking your physician. What clinical trial would I qualify for? Are there other trials that I would qualify for, and can I participate in different trials? Can I still see my usual healthcare provider? And then do I need a healthcare professional to refer me for a clinical trial? And some questions for the study coordinator. What is the goal of the trial? How long will the trial last, and where does it take place? What expenses are reimbursed? What are the requirements for joining, and what other procedures and tests are required? How often are the study visits, and how long is each visit? How am I protected, and can I leave the trial early? So as I mentioned before, yes, participants are allowed to drop out of the trial at any time, even if it hasn't completed yet. And some questions to consider regarding your family. So how will participating in a clinical trial affect my family and support system? How will my child's academics be affected? What are the physical risks? What safety mechanisms are in place? And is personal information safe? So patient privacy and confidentiality are a top priority in clinical trials, and the appropriate security measures are in place to ensure that personal health information and trial records are protected. So there are many different support people available, and I would encourage you to reach out to them. Some of them include other families, your doctors, patient engagement rep, research coordinator, patient advocacy groups, and so on. And so that's all I have today. But please stop by our booth right outside. We have some handouts, and we call them roadmaps. So we created them to help guide you along the journey. And most of the information that I talked about today will be in them. And thank you so much for your time. I will also be out at the booth if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. And if I don't know the answer, I'm sure somebody on my team can help out. Or if you think of anything later, feel free to email us anytime at insightfulmoments@ptcbio.com. Or you can give us a call at 833-PTC-HOPE, or in Spanish, 833-PTC-VITA. Thanks again.
Right. I always find that like super interesting. Any additional questions around anything that we did this morning too, before we continue to move on?